Why is hello world always printed like this? Why can't we do something like this? Notice I'm changing the spacing here. Or how about this, where I reverse the way the spacing is changed? Or how about this, where it looks like hello world is somewhere falling down? Or perhaps like this, where I'm making it fall again, but in a different way. Now, the interesting bit is that, in fact, all this can be done by just modifying a basic code, which is what we are going to see in this video. Let's get started, starting from, let's say, how do we do something like this? Now, the main challenge here really is that how do I get to print in a way that the spacing between these letters keeps going down? Notice here, I've got say 9 spaces here, then 8, and so on and so forth, which becomes very clear when I put these instead of spaces, I put say something like a star. I've got 9 stars, 8 stars, 7 stars, and so on and so forth till I've got no stars and hence no spacing in between these. Now, why is this hard? Because, well, I can't use a normal step. A normal step will give me exactly equal spacing between all of this. So you might say, okay, the first thought that comes to my mind is that I'm going to write a mega print statement where I have print h followed by, let's say, 9 spaces, then an e followed by 8 spaces, and so on and so forth. Now, I want to highlight that you must, if you were to do this, it will work, but you must make sure that you're giving a sep with zero spacing absolutely. And the reason for this is that if you did not give a sep here, sep will introduce spacing between h and this set of spaces and e and this set of spaces, which means that if this set of spaces say 9 values, in fact you will end up with 11 spaces between h and e, one because between h and spaces, and then spaces and e, and so on and so forth. So which is why this sep is absolutely essential. We'll see this in action later on, but clearly this is not an elegant solution. You are going to make mistakes. It's going to be very dirty, very difficult to control, and very painful to debug. Yeah. So there has to be a better solution. And what could that better solution be? Let's think about it. One way this could be done is that, look, I need 9 spaces between H and E, 8 spaces between E and L, 7 spaces between L and the next L, and so on and so forth. So what I could do is that I could say, well, okay, look, I'm going to print H and then I'm going to print 10 spaces. However, I'm going to erase one space for my next print. So I'm going to erase one print space but stay on the same line. Next, I print E. Again, I print 10 spaces, but this time I'm going to erase 2 spaces, but I stay again on the same line. Then I erase 3 spaces, stay on the same line. So I'm going to get in a situation where the spacing will keep going down as we proceed. Now, how do I do this? Remember, I must have a sep in between, otherwise the spaces will all go off. So sep is taken care of, but I can do this using the end statement. At the end, I can put a backslash b, which means backspace. So that removes one space. I put two backslash b's, backslash b. It becomes two, spaces erased, and so on and so forth. And this could be a working solution. We'll see this action, but before I get there, I want to get you to think of some other ways of doing this. In fact, there are many other interesting solutions here. Think about it, and I'll be happy to discuss with you. But let's see how this solution could possibly work out. So, in fact, I have done the scheme over here. What I have done here is basically the same scheme. So I've created this spaces, 10 spaces. Basically 10 times single space means I'm creating a string which has got 10 spaces. And thereafter, like I said, I'm printing h and spaces with a sep of, basically sep of nothing. So which means, I get 10 spaces, sep of nothing is important. And notice this is not a single space. In fact, this is absolutely nothing. And then I go and erase one of those spaces. Next, I print E and I go and erase 2 spaces, and so on and so forth. Let's see how this thing works out. So if I ran this code, I'm going to get hello world with 9 spaces here, then 8 spaces here, 7, 6, 5, 4 until there is no space whatsoever. So I'm going to stop this just to illustrate this point. Let's say, let's illustrate how this whole thing is working. Let's say I make my spaces, let's say a star. Now what happens is when I run this, first I'm printing spaces, remember, so I'm getting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's because 10 times star essentially is another string with 10 stars. But if you see carefully, I've got 9 in between H and E, 8 between E and L, 7 between two L's, and so on and so forth. That's how it's working because I'm printing those and then I'm removing one of those, one of the spaces using this backslash b. So I'll go back to my, spaces. But now you might ask me, okay, how do I So this is fine, but how do I do the reverse? In fact, the reverse is exactly the mirror of this. So what I do is that I'm going to print 10 spaces and remove all 10 of them. Next, I'm going to print 10 spaces again and going to remove 8 of them. Sorry, 9 of them, and so on and so forth. So if I did that, I'm going to end up in the exact reverse situation, which is what I've done here. So I print, say h spaces. Again, sep is 0. I mean, there's nothing. And then I go and remove 10 out of those spaces. Now, one thing, be clear that if I want to remove 10 spaces, 10 backspaces, I must give 10 times backslash b. It can't be one backslash b followed by 9 b's because the backslash is important here. So I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And let's just see this. So first one will be the normal print. Then I'll get, so I come in the first one, I give an enter here. Again, I get exactly the reverse thing happening. Notice there's no spacing between H and E. Then there's a spacing between E and L, there's spacing between L and N, and so on and so forth. And eventually I end up in the same length because exact same process has been reversed. Now you might ask me, okay, well, this is all fine, but how is this elegant? I mean, aren't we going to make mistakes in, let's say, writing so many B's? And isn't it like a large code, which is quite painful in itself? You are right, but the difference now is that unlike earlier, where we had just one print statement, here I see lots and lots of print statements, which means that I see a very clear potential to put this inside a loop. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to say, okay, let's just call this string test is say hello world. Now I'm going to have to repeat this for the length of the string. So I say a for loop here for kk in range, let's say, length of say test, which means length of the string test. And what is it that I'm doing? Well, remember, I'm printing one character of the string. So I'm going to print, let's say in this case, test kk, because kk is going to go from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 until 10. So I'm printing HELLO, exactly what I'm doing here. I'm printing this string called spaces, which is what I'm doing over there as in this code as well. Next, I'm saying sep is equal to empty. Now, remember, I do this because I do not want any extra spaces to appear between all this. So hence I do sep is equal to end, I mean 0. And now end is where I have to do something. So I'm going to say end is equal to temp for now. Now I got to define what is temp. Temp, I want, for example, in this case, I want temp to be equal to kk plus 1 times, this basic string called b. Now, backslash b. Now, why is this going to work? Because remember, I was printing spaces and then I was taking one away. Then I was taking two away. Now, as this loop runs, it's going to be one backspace, two backspaces, three backspaces, and so on and so forth. And eventually, I'm going to be done with this. So I'm just going to put a, break over here, and let's see how this thing looks, right? So I'm going to put, let's say, for me to demarcate here, and I'm also going to put an extra input here so that my code actually stops at this point. So, it's going to put in the first loop, first, pattern with the loop, and then it's going to stop, right? So it does that. In fact, it does exactly what I had thought. Now notice it's this part of the code that is running, and I'm stopping here because of the input. This print happened, all this happened because of this loop. And in fact, this loop, if you think carefully, is just a repetition, is just a concise way of writing whatever we had done here. And that's because for loop, the kk increments, and everything else follows from there. So, and I keep doing this, right? Now I told you that this basic structure can be modified to get all the other patterns. And how do I do that? Well, remember, there is a lot of similarity between these two. I am basically printing the same letter. The only thing that is changing is the number of backspaces. So I need 10 backspaces right now. What I will do is that I'm going to say my kk starts from 0. So I'm going to say, instead of kk plus 1, I'm going to say 10 minus kk backspaces. So which means that when kk is 0, when the loop starts, I'm going to get 10 backspaces. Then I'm going to get 9 backspaces, and so on and so forth. If I did this, now I'm going to get, okay, so I'm going to stop this time round. When I run my code, I'm going to get exactly the other way. Notice I've got hello with spacing less in the beginning, and then spacing keeps on increasing. Now, how can I modify this to give me that falling effect? Well, again, it's not hard at all. I can use, along with all this, I can say, look, I need to add to this string a backslash v, because remember, backslash v creates the effect of a vertical tab. Now, if I did this, so what the temp basically is going to be 10 backspaces plus ended with a backslash v. Now, this is addition of strings, concatenation of strings, like join apple, banana, and scratch. When I do this, what happens is I'm going to get, notice, I'm going to get this falling effect, because every time I got, I write this letter, I come down, I make a vertical tab and I come down. So the next letter always comes over here, right? So basically it creates a falling effect. Now, how did I do the other falling effect? Again, very simple. All I need to do is to change kk plus 1 with this vertical tab. And, if I did this, I'm going to end up with exactly the reverse effect. It's as though it's falling at an increasing rate. Now, I know this part may be a little bit, confusing, but it will become clear once you understand the for loop better, which is basically repetition with a variable. And once you understand, let's say, this part better, which is, when we are adding strings, basically we are multiplying this basic string many number of times, which is like repeating it. And then we are concatenating, or we are joining two strings, which is through this plus, right? Now, these are strings. That's why plus acts like a join apple, banana. We are going to look at this more carefully as we go on. But I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found this engaging and it got you thinking for creative ideas. Take care. Thank you so much. Bye bye.